1, 2, 3, 4.
It's a big moment for us.
Yeah.
There is two guests that I wanted on the podcast, and you were one of the two.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Are we recording it?
Yep.
We're recording. So welcome to the Mudblood podcast to Mr. John Connor. What about you? Absolute fucking legend. One of my favourite Irish actors of all the projects you're in. As you're probably fed up talking about them too, John. As I find it with mine, people talk about stuff you've done in the past, and you're sort of, at the minute, you're involved in your own things that you're doing, and you're going, why is nobody talking about what I'm doing now? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you also understand that, there are certain things that you're popular for, and, like a lot of people say to me, you just play a gangster and a traveller. And I have about 70 IMDb credits, like International Movie Database is basically all the credits you have, and that's what all really matters as an actor. But a lot of them, I don't play gangster and traveller, play all different kinds of roles. However, the ones that have been the most popular are gangster and traveller roles. Yeah. So what I got to do is check my own ego and go, listen, these roles have done me really well, and people really like them, and they resonated for whatever reason. And listen, it's better than getting a slap in the face, isn't it, or shoveling shite for a living.
100%.
You know what I mean? And I had all sorts of mad jobs and, mad way into this. And I don't come from, like yourself, I wouldn't come from a very privileged upper class background that, embraces the arts or get embraced when they go into the arts. So to be honest, I'm just grateful to be where I am and happy to talk about anything.
That I think it's your experiences in life, because a lot of people would say to me, oh, because there's a lot of comedians I meet and they come from arts backgrounds.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't, and I think that's why a lot of people come and see me and like my stuff, because it's working class and it's the experiences you had. Do you know what I mean? Like you were up against it.
Yeah. Well, man, like life experience, there's no substitute for it. Like, art is, at the end of the day, just expressing something. So the more life experience and ups and downs and all different colours of experience you have, the better for art. And actually, when you have all that, the art becomes less contrived and it's more natural. It comes out anyway. It comes out in that way, and especially for comedy, even more so, because you're both writer and performer as well. Obviously, I write and perform in terms of some of the theatre I do and whatever. But, comedians are, for me, the most kind of fearless artists, I actually think, and I'm a big admirer of stand-up comedy. Yeah. Like, huge.
Oh, thank you very much.
I love people like Louis C.K. I love Patrice O'Neill, Norm MacDonald. I love Richard Pryor. I love all those. Like, I obsessively love them. Yeah. I'd watch stand-up comedy probably even more than films, because I do think it's the most fearless art form, And I think, we're seeing more and more Irish comedians now, but that should really actually suit us. If you look at Ireland and our tradition of storytelling and Shanachieism, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Back in old Gaelic Ireland, the Shanachie had so much power tribally, because they would call out power. They would call out the High King, the local. Yeah. And they were really the sort of court jester that you would have in the more British medieval times. We had our Shanachie. So people were afraid of them because they would speak truth to power. And that's what comedians do and are doing now in the world. And actually, now it's actually almost getting boring because it's becoming a cool thing. But about 5 years ago, in the middle of woke central, people had a lot more to risk. But it is great, and it's a great time for stand-up comedy, I think.
No, and it is coming to the fore, like in terms of Irish comedy's renown now. Belfast especially, everyone's coming here. And I just announced Australia again, and I was telling Emmons I'm doing the Middle East, and Sean's going to me, it's my brother, and he's like, who the fuck's watching you in Kuwait? And, but it's Irish people are everywhere around the world, which is a thing at the minute. People who are fucking racist in this country, I don't get it. I just don't get it, because I fucking worked all around the world. Even in my building trade, when I was a fucking joiner, I worked in fucking London. I was everywhere, and I lived in America first. And I don't see how people can be, but we do tend to have that element of, like, going down the wrong road every now and again. Do you know what I mean?
But Paddy, I think let's look at the glass half full. In terms of racism in Ireland, with the exception of travellers who by every metric and every study, by the EU, by the UN, by the own Irish state, North and South, travellers are actually the most discriminated against people, right?
Yeah.
And part of that being accepted is because we're white and people feel like they're not racist, right? But really outside of that, and I'm not being acting the victim here, because I ain't no victim and I would never adapt to the victim mentality, it'll get you nowhere. But outside of that, our racism problem on, say, like, it's not a huge problem in comparison to other countries.
Yeah.
And I think it's largely because we are a conscious people with it, and we know in our past, I don't think it's as big as a problem it is in other countries, what I'm saying. We should always keep tabs in it because it can always grow, and seeds grow into plants, and we know that. I think it is the most ridiculous thing ever, an Irish person being racist, genuinely racist. That's so ridiculous. Look at our past, look at our history, look what we went through, and look at our ancestors and what they had to struggle with. So definitely, absolutely not. I also don't think that people should just get called racist for nothing either. That's another thing. Because then the word, as you know, as a comedian, loses power, So, but I think it is creeping, and it's largely down to people, largely down to the old tactic, which is divide and conquer.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that, and because it's a tactic that has worked since the beginning of time, and it's getting used over and over and over. So the same people keep getting scapegoated now, or new people are getting scapegoated. But this is a tactic of the elite. So the only thing that I'm anti is the elite.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that have fucked the world over and over and time again. If you look at all the wars that are created by them, even if you look at the First World War, it's created by a bunch of monarchs across Europe that are all related to each other, basically having a family row. And poor people go to die in World War One because of it, including ancestors of mine. Michael Ward, my great-grandfather, fought in World War One, and as they say, or as the old Irish saying would go, took the king's shilling.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. They took the king's shilling because they were starving with the hunger, Yeah. And we see it in every single war. Obviously, there are some wars that are just absolutely, but again, it's divide and conquer. I love to see people come together, whether you're black, white, gay, straight, working class, traveller, it doesn't really matter to me. I really do actually believe in content of your character.
Yeah.
I think it's the only way, because collective blame is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
Whenever in history one group got blamed collectively for the individual acts of a person, shit went wrong.
Yeah.
Really, really bad. Nazi Germany, for instance, and not even that they had a legitimate claim to begin with. But so I just think it's about treating people on an individual basis, and that's why, like, genuinely go back to content of character. Martin Luther King, he knew it. He wasn't looking for special treatment. He was just looking to be treated as an individual. And we should just treat everybody as an individual. And if we can actually focus on that and stop our tendency to blame a group, we're going to get along grand.
100%. No, you're right. And, even growing up, like, you come from the travelling community, and I have a lot of connection to the travelling community, even going back into my youth.
You have a traveller name by McDonald,
yeah, it's definitely.
I don't know now, Paddy. Paddy McDonald.
I done the fucking DNA.
Yeah.
And my dad's adopted and stuff like that, and I was convinced
Yeah.
that there would have been traveller in there, and it didn't come up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's mainly because of the storytelling and the building work and the fighting and all that. And I was like, there has to be something. There has to be something.
Yeah.
But nothing came up in it.
I think you're an honorary traveller. I claim you. I baptised thee a Pavi.
But I've always been friends with travellers, always like connected to them. And no matter what way it worked, I always, whether it was the building work, whether it was, when I was in America, I was working for my brother-in-law in a shop on a boardwalk, and a travelling guy came up and he was like, what are you doing working in here? Fuck's sake, come on, you're a fucking good Irishman. I'll bring you out into the tarmac and you'll get more money and all. Don't be working in a shop, that's for a woman and all. And then when I came back and I went into the black taxis, I used to bring the traveller kids to school.
Yeah, no way.
And that's something that I want to hit on with you. The school didn't care if they came in or not.
Yeah. Well, when I grew up in school, Paddy, we were put in an all-traveller class, segregated, not allowed to actually go in with the settled kids. And I didn't grow up in Alabama in the 1950s as a black child, So what happened to me then is you gain a lot of, or you develop a lot of resentment towards settled people in general. Because you go, these motherfuckers hate me, like, you know, or being called knacker. Like, a knacker is not as big as a word up north. It's more maybe pikey, you'd hear a bit more, but down south, you'd hear knacker a lot. In Dublin, you'd hear it from working class kids calling you knacker. However, upper class
call them
knackers. Yeah. That's the irony of the whole thing. So we were put in an all-traveller class. Now, me and my brother Joe were clumped together in a class where, like, travellers of all ages, and we weren't. It reminds me, do you ever remember that film Life? Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy. Such a funny film, right? But they walk into a diner, an old country diner, on the way down to sell their bootlegging or whatever, bootleg moonshine, or to get it. And the fella's name is Gary, say, and he goes, "Hey Gary, can I get some of your pie?" And he goes, "How do you know my name?" And he goes, "Well, it's right there on your shirt. You can read," you know, because he's so surprised that he can read. That same thing happened to me when I said that I walked in and the teacher gave me a colouring book, and I was like, colouring book? Like, I'm reading since I'm literally 3-4 years of age. My father taught me how to read before I went to school, right? Because my father was a kind of really intelligent fella. And when I said that to the teacher, he said, "You can read?" Couldn't believe I could read, right? This teacher of the traveller class of all ages. So he says he took over a book, and the book was Huggy Bear. And I said, "You're taking the fucking piss. I was reading this 3 years ago, right?" But that's what happened to us. That happened to a lot of travellers of my generation, and up until a few years ago, still happening. So what happened? The chain of events that followed that was me building another resentment against all settled people, thinking all settled people hated me, and no matter what, that they were never going to give you a shot. So then you develop that attitude. 2 wrongs don't make a right. So if you're thinking that, and I have the expectation and an unconscious bias against settled people never accepting me, and they have this bias against me as a traveller, when both of you meet each other, a negative is only going to come from that. Yeah. No matter what, and my fault too. Do you know what I mean? No, so this is the sort of complexities actually that this causes. But really, who's to blame? That policy was a state policy. That wasn't the Umfle growing up beside me in Darndale and the Coolock. No, not at all. And actually, they got maligned too, working class. Like, I'm from Darndale, which is one of the most maligned, neglected, damaged in terms of reputation council estates in all of Ireland. And there is bad stuff happening and always, but it is a minority. Yeah. And they're the best salt of the earth people ever.
The charity within
staunch,
that,
beautiful people, you know, and the old people in it. But they get maligned too, like travellers. So my thing is, like, we actually have way more in common than we don't. We really don't. And what we all have to do is just actually recognise that and see this whole thing, we're all the same. We're not all the fucking same. Everybody's different. That's all right. People are allowed to be different. Actually, that's what makes the world interesting and not too boring, you know?
Yeah. No, and the one thing that people have said to me over the years, well, what about this? And we've had a caravan from 1982. That was another thing too that I never put in there. My dad.
Are you sure we're not travellers?
My dad.
Are you brothers?
Yeah, we're brothers.
But
my dad. He was a roofer by trade, so he worked the building game, but he got a few quid, and he says to my ma says, "Why don't we go to Disneyland?" He went, "No, we'll buy a caravan, because then we can have a caravan for holidays for the next." And we've had a caravan from 1982.
No way.
And the
we
people,
still go, like,
but we still have
it. Sell it?
No, they've changed it. They've changed it over the years. But it's one of them ones that, like, I laugh at people whenever I do, like, Newcastle or Carnlough and all the people that's in the caravans. I went, "You're the same people in Belfast that give off about the people on the Glen Road or up there." I says, and when it comes to weekend, you all drive in your transits and go to your fucking caravan and be in a caravan anyway.
Let me tell you about the Glen Road Tramblers. They're related to me. They're my cousins, right? So, my mother's from the Glen Road. Mm-hmm. She was born there, and like a lot of my family from the north. My granny and all. And when traveller ethnicity was recognised, Jerry Adams did a speech in the Dáil about it, and he talked about the travellers that helped him and his family out of Ballymurphy when it all kicked off in '69 and took all the furniture and helped loads of them in lorries. And it turned out those travellers are actually my relations.
There you go.
Donohue's and I think it was Murphy's and Dundon's from the Glen Road. Yeah. Funny enough, It's gas, like this sort of history, and also the history that people actually don't know in terms of what travellers have done politically too. But at the same time, they wouldn't know about, you know, the traveller history with the Irish state, especially down south, and I say down south because of certain policies that were brought in down there that were like they literally like Nazi. Like if you look at the 1963 report on itinerancy, that was headed by Charlie High before he became Taoiseach, and this was less than 20 years after Nazi Germany, so 1963, and he talked about looking for the final solution to the itinerant problem, which we were called then. So Hitler said less than 20 years, the final solution to the Jewish problem. So he deliberately used the same precise language that Adolf Hitler used for Jews, but he used it for travellers. And in that commission, of which no travellers were a part of, they were given suggestions like by councillors, TDs, elected representatives, ministers, like sterilised traveller women, and they won't be able to breed anymore, castrate the men, or put them out in Spike Island, all travellers, or take their children away from them, which we know traveller children were disproportionately taken away way more than settled children, unfortunately, and working class kids, obviously, way more than middle or upper class. So that's a class thing in general. And so that was the sort of, you know, the big, it was a culmination of actually decades of policies that were brought in. But that was a big change and a shift towards the culture, because when the state started looking at you like you're the problem of the state, you should be exterminated and absorbed into the settler community, to use more language from High. When you start looking at that, then you see, wow, okay, whenever there's an action, there's a reaction. So there was, first of all, a reaction from the rest of the Irish culture to that, you know, and that sort of acceptance around us being less than or their problem. But then when the media paints us that constantly, you see settled people are going to react to that and you're going to consume that. So then it became really an accepted thing. You know, it just became a part of the culture. And I don't blame the average settled person who discriminates against travellers. I actually don't. Because you learn it at home. You learn hate. Hate is learned, you know. Like Damien Dempsey has a great song. He's a good friend of mine, Dame. I'm proud to say that. He's a great song called Born Without Hate, you know. And it's so simple but so true.
Yeah.
You know, we learn hate, you know. And hate is not good for the person we're hating, but hate is not good for ourselves.
Yeah.
If you hate anybody,
if you have that in you, yeah,
you can't be happy.
No.
You actually can't. There's something wrong with you spiritually if you go, I hate that person.
Yeah.
You know, I've even started to remove that out of my vocabulary completely. Even, you know, when you just say it hyperbolically or joking or oh, I hate him. I don't even say that anymore.
Because your body knows, or your mind knows.
Yeah, because I don't want to even feed into that word hate. It's so wrong, I think, you know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And just in terms of like where we are now, I mean, Tyson Fury fucking going on to be a world champion as an advocate. You as an actor, Packy Lee is an actor, you know.
I worked with Packy in my first film. Yeah.
You know, I grew up with Packy.
Packy's a lovely fella.
Do you know, I've never had anything. So when you see like people doing well from the like, where would Ireland be in terms of fighting without travellers? You know, the travellers have always been in and around.
Totally, yeah. Well, it's interesting. Travellers make up less than 0% of the population of Ireland, actually 0.6, so tiny population. But they make up around 50% of the Irish champions, which is an incredible statistic, especially when you bear in mind that Irish boxing in general hits way above its weight in terms of its population per capita in the world. So yeah, like that is an amazing statistic. It shows you the power too of culture, because it's a fighting culture, which is really just Irish culture, but it's also a defensive culture in that we had to defend ourselves and defend who we are. So like a lot of trauma can actually create great things. Like there's a boom in stand-up comedy in the north here in Belfast because of all the trauma that has happened in this place. You know, if you look at some of the best stand-up comedy that came from the 70s and 80s, that was born out of a lot of trauma, you know, came out of the civil rights. You look at Richard Pryor, who was a civil rights activist, but also was born, it's really a descendant of slavery too. If you look at jazz and the blues, it's a descendant of slavery. If you look at Irish traditional music and rebel music, it's a descendant of what we went through as a people together collectively, you know. Yeah. So actually, what presents itself after a moment of trauma or years of trauma is an opportunity to create something special.
Yeah.
And this is where creativity comes into play. You know, creativity, I believe it can change lives. It changed my life and it saved my life. But for me, what I've come to the conclusion with is that it's a God-given gift, or God gifts you it when you need it, you know?
Yeah.
Because I went way back into my faith now. My mother passed away 2 years ago, and it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And a lot of bad things have happened to me in my life. There's a drama. But creativity always kind of got me out of things. And this was one of the ones that creativity couldn't. And God did, you know, and God is the ultimate creator, you know, and creativity comes from God. But that's why I do, at any opportunity, I'll talk to like working class communities, travellers, whatever, about the power of creativity, because you get the chance to create something from nothing. And the buzz and the rush of that is unbelievable and so cathartic for your heart and your soul. And I genuinely believe that people who come from our sort of backgrounds are the most creative people, actually, and do tell the best stories, but don't get represented enough either in film, television, theatre, stand-up or whatever. There is still a class bias, you know, and we must challenge that and stand up to that, you know. And I genuinely believe, though, sometimes bringing people together is much easier to do it with a light touch. Like I used to do things with rage a lot, you know, because rage was a big fueler for me. But actually, the older I get, more mature I get, and actually the more faith I have in God, I realise that the softer touch is the way sometimes. Because with a rage-filled intent, you tend to alienate people, you know. And you know, think about what do you want to do at the end of the day. You actually want to bring people together, because that's what art does, brings people together. And I think, you know, the best thing that art can do is, I remember I was like heartbroken when I was like a teenager, yeah.
God.
Yeah, and, you know, puppy love and all that shit and whatever. But I remember hearing this song by Elvis. What was the song? I think it was Separate Ways, it's called. It's not a known song. But in that moment, I was sure that song was written for me.
Yeah.
It was written for me for this moment. That's why Elvis actually didn't write the song at all. And he never did write songs, but he took the credit for them because he's a great manager in ways, but also a really bad manager. But that's the power of art.
Yeah.
It makes it feel like it was written for you, or you're not alone. You're not alone on this earth. You know what I mean? Someone else has felt what you felt, and they expressed it through a creative art form that has touched millions of people. Yeah. Now that is the ultimate power of creativity, to make us feel like we're not alone, you know?
Yeah. And it's right. I actually be surprised that there's not more traveller stand-up comics.
Yeah, I'm very surprised by that as well, actually.
Do you know, because the fucking crack I used to have in the taxi, even with the young ones, and from an early age, they're fucking on it, like, you know, the fucking, you used to drive into the camp and get them for school, and the whole way to school I'd have been fucking laughing. And don't get me wrong, there was days I stopped the top of White Rock and pulled two of them out, and I was like, we can't fighting in the taxi. You know what I mean? And I fought with the dads over, you didn't bring the kids to school. I was like, listen, they told me to go to the granny's house, and then they went in and they didn't come back out again. I can't force them to go. But I'm just surprised there is a couple doing it.
Yeah, there's not enough.
I would love to do, like, Connor Keys, another comedian friend of mine, and Ro Boyle, one's from Strabane, one's from Oma, done a lot of work with the travelling community. And I says to them, wonder could we try and get something going, to even a night, you know, for the travellers to try it, so that they're not put in the
Let
spot.
me know if I can support it in any way. I think it's a great idea.
I would love to do it, John. I really would, because just looking at the way they are, like, as you say, we're talking about the travellers fighting, and some of the travellers, the things that they do, building ways and work ways, and the stuff that they build, and just fantastic. They're always on the go. When you pass that Glen Road, there's always something there. If a tree came down on the road, they would go out and cut it off the road, and then they'd be selling it. You know, it's just there's a lot more to give from them. Yeah,
you know, travellers, anything you can say about the Irish in general, you can say extra about travellers, right? This might get me in some trouble with some traveller activists who are not even travellers anymore. But like, for instance, with drinking, the Irish are drinkers, travellers are extra drinkers. Do you know what I mean? With fighting, the Irish are fighters, the travellers are extra fighters. You can say it with a lot of things. With storytelling, it's the same thing. travelers obsess. Like, everything has got to do with a story. Everything. You meet a fella down the road, come here, I'll tell you, I met a fella over here and this will happen, blah, blah, blah. And it turns into a setup, a punchline, a callback. They have this natural structure, and I see it all the time.
100%.
And we adore storytellers so much. Yeah. Like, talk about having a status in a community, right? Every community is broken into statuses in one way or another, and there's many ways to kind of gain status. The number one way to gain status, really, in our community is being a great storyteller. Mm-hmm. He's some crack. You know what I mean? Now, we have that in the Irish community in general, but your man who's some crack, who's some story, he's the fellow who has all the mates. He's the fellow who has everybody around him in the pub. Everybody's ringing him. Everybody wants to go and have a pint with this man. You know, they're begging him, and this man's plagued because he's fucking drinking with everybody. He's getting free pints everywhere. You know what I mean? But that sort of level of storytelling, and I come from a long line of that, actually, believe it or not, in Shanakies in my family, and my granny as well, not just men. My granny was a great Shanakeen storyteller, poet, author, is still, but a lot of the men are just the best storytellers. Like, I've uncles there that just, they leave me like in stitches laughing, like where I can't breathe and the tears are coming out of my eyes at 1 o'clock in the morning in the camp sometimes. They just start telling you stories, and a lot of them are stories that are traumatic stories but told in the funniest ways. You know, or what we'll do is we'll sit around and tell each other discrimination stories, and we won't stop laughing at them and see who has the worst one, you know. And then my uncles would pull out, oh, well, we were bet to death in school and slapped to death, you little pikeys. And we'd be like, oh, no way. But the way it's all said, again, it's used in trauma and turned into something 100%. Creative. Because even just the verbal act of telling a story without writing it, without making a stage play of it or a show, I think that's like the purest form of creativity, actually, in general. Just telling stories, which is really the Irish way, you know?
It is. And the Arts Council don't see it that way, to be honest with you. The comedians aren't seen as art form, like, in a sense.
That's so silly, especially considering comedians are writers too. So you have the performance art with the writing. Sure, that would be, for me, the purest form of artist, I would say.
I wasn't really taken serious until this year. I wrote a one-man play and performed it at Christmas.
Oh, did you?
And then they were like, oh fuck! And then they're starting to take me serious now. No, oh look, we can maybe give you money for this, and we can.
Because you can show you can act.
What the fuck, like, you know?
That's mad.
I mean,
that's still part of the class divide.
It is a
thing
class
of arts,
divide.
isn't it? Because you'll very easily see, you know, orchestras or jazz ensembles or whatever, you know, plays that'll be funded because it was traditionally, you know, an upper class form of art. Whereas you'll not see, you know, a comedian, you'll not see a punk band, you'll not see a thing getting a grant.
That's mad, isn't it?
So
but you'll see like someone who just like picks up a ball of shit and throws it on the wall, and then that's art. You ever see this ridiculous fucking art? Like,
but
basically every show at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Like you're in your what?
But I'll tell you what you are seeing. I'm fed up watching. Right, I'm fed up watching gangster fucking stuff from England. They constantly now every time they have a traveller or they have a travelling fucking section to it. It's like every single fucking one that has it now.
There's someone usually just butchering the traveller accent.
100%. It's never done.
And everything about it, you're just like,
it's too, like, that's not the way it is.
No, not at all.
Do you know?
And also anybody who plays a gangster in general, right? You know, like I grew up surrounded with tough men and gangsters, right? In a tough area, in a tough community, and they're storytellers. Now, as a result, I grew up and I could tell an old story, I could fight and whatever. That's my environment that shaped me. So, when I get typecast as playing tough men and gangsters, tough shit. I grew up around tough men and gangsters. It's why I'm good at it.
Yeah.
So when someone grows up around solicitors and doctors, they're good at playing solicitors and doctors. Now, that doesn't mean I can't play a solicitor and doctor, but they're a safer bet. But that doesn't mean they can't play a gangster or a tough man, but I'm a safer bet, right? The worst thing ever is when you see someone who can't play a gangster. And the biggest sign is, forget about the travel thing for a minute. Travelers in general, you can't, like, it's very hard to play a traveller if you don't know the community inside out. You know what I mean? In terms of satisfying a traveller. But a gangster, the thing they do straight away, first of all, they do this thing with their mouth and all. I think they have to move their mouth a lot weird. But the movement, the walk, like this gangster walk, the most powerful men know they don't have to say nothing, and they don't overtalk. That's in the writing too, of course, of the piece. But this movement and this like I'm hard, and all of a sudden that's not how it's done.
No,
I've been in these conversations. Like I was nearly. Should I say it? Well, I've met a lot of these gangsters, a lot of them, and the main ones and the big ones, and hitmen. Like there was a famous hitman, the most famous hitman, who I think killed more than anybody in Irish history, who recently got killed a couple of years ago. He tried to kill me when I was 17. And he went looking for me. I got into a fight with his friend. I was 17. His friend was about 28 or 9. His friend bet up my cousin, who was 14 at the time, called him a pikey. And I'll tell you your man's name after, but I won't go into the name, just in case.
Yeah.
It was just going to go viral for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But anyway, my cousin came down to me and he had a black eye and whatever. And I went down to your man and we had a go and I knocked him out. And when you're 17, you're a bit temperamental. I went a bit, overdid a bit in fairness. And his best friend happened to be this notorious hitman who I killed a number of people at the time, since had killed way more, like the most in Irish history, as I said, in terms of the gangland feuds. Anyway, he went looking for me that night in my cul-de-sac with a gun, but I was already out of the cul-de-sac and too wide for that, back to the old Trafford camp, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The old fortress. But anyway, it got resolved in one way or another when I was 17. So what I'm saying is, I've been in these brush-ups. I was born in that world. So when you see someone with the shoulders, with the ridiculous mouth movements and just needless shouting and overacting, they don't do it like that, actually, because they're so confident in themselves. And a lot of them
need to be like that.
So a lot of them are so psychotic and withdrawn, actually. They don't, you know what I mean? So the power is in the silence in general anyway. You know, the less movement, the less you move, the less you blink. These are those little technical things. The stronger you'll come across, you know. If you want to play weak, the first thing you do straight away is blink a lot. You want to play weak and look all around the place. If you want to play strong, just look directly down the middle of one eye and keep your eyes open and stay still. And that's it. It's very simple little things, you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Now you're on the other side of the camera a lot of the time too. So how do you sort of, if you're looking that out of someone on camera, how do you make them, if they're not from that world, how do you make them understand it?
As a director, I wouldn't cast anybody like that. Yeah. So as they say, 80% of directing is in the casting. I think your biggest job as a director is casted well. So I did a film called The Black Guelph, which is about intergenerational trauma, drive and clerical abuse. And it's set in a Dublin gangland world, which people would expect from me, but it's not really about that. It's about that trauma and the sex abuse scandal that came from the Catholic Church. And as a Catholic and a practicing Catholic, I think it's very important to put a critical eye on that stuff. And I have family members who went through all that because you have to be able to criticise the church to keep them straight, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. The main thing for me as an actor in making that film, first and foremost, was casting it right. So I casted some of the best actors that you can get in Ireland. And not all of them are really famous or whatever, but I just knew them and worked with them and were all really good. Like Ray Murley, who worked with me in Broken Law and Cardboard Gangsters. He played the Nordy character in Cardboard Gangsters, the IRA fella. He played the lead role in it. He's just amazing. He won the Seymour Cassell Award for the film in Oldenburg Film Festival, and the film won Best Film. Although it was really repressed in the Irish art circles for many reasons. Because it didn't just go over the Catholic Church, it went after the state and how the institutions colluded, you know. Because it wasn't just the church, you know. And it was the state, first and foremost, actually. And, you know, the subsequent things that happened afterwards too, you know, like the redress board system in which victims had to relive their trauma, you know, on the stand, and were told they were liars they were liars and they were telling lies about what the church did and the state did. They're being told this by state liars and Vatican liars, and the abuse they got on the stand is unbelievable and just hell on earth. But yeah, I just cast it right. And then when you cast it right, then it's less for work to do, you know. The best thing you can do is not direct. You know, for me as a director, you only direct when you have to direct. You know what I mean? But you do have to do it sometimes. And for me, what it's about is, you know, I play dumb as a director, you know. I play dumb because actors generally are very insecure people because they're very emotional, you know. and they cling onto their emotions a lot. So I wouldn't act like I'm some superior force coming in to tell them what to do. I'd make them feel relaxed, and I'd probably give them a bad idea that might be the seed of a good idea that they will come to the conclusion with themselves.
Yes.
And I learned that from Jim Sheridan, the great Jim Sheridan, who I did a film called Secret Scripture and with him in 2016-15. And when I wasn't on set acting, I asked him, can I just watch as a director and shadow you? And he said, no problem, you know. And I've actually since worked with him on a new film, Recreation, that was directed and written by himself and David Merriman, who's now a very good friend of mine, very talented fella. And that just premiered last week in Tribeca Film Festival in New York and got rave reviews from Variety and Deadline. So I'm delighted for both of them lads. So the advantage I've had, long story, very short or short long, is that I've worked with so many directors as an actor, both in film, television and theatre. So I've got to absorb all of those and learn from them, and then put my own kind of new unique slant on it, you know?
Yeah.
It's great. I seen you're doing a project at the minute where you're inviting people in, which is a great thing. You're inviting people in and they come and do classes like a Saturday and a Sunday in Dublin, and then at the end of it do something, because there's so many people that don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I love to see projects like that. It's just one of them. It's the same way as I always wanted to do a project where I like take people in, not to say that I'm going to do a class in comedy, not that way. But I do think a lot of the up and coming comedians do say about me, I will give people opportunities, because I didn't start comedy until I was 30, and it was like a get my finger bit off as a doorman that fucking put me into mental health issues that then put me into fucking comedy, and I used it as a tool to help my mental health.
But Paddy, I think that was probably the best way for you to get into comedy.
Oh, 100%.
Was already having life experience, and already having went through mental health problems.
100%.
You know? Because if you get into it at 18, like
you don't have any experience.
What were you going to say?
Exactly.
And then your experience, you have so much just experience as a comedian then without not witnessing the world in its pure form and in all the bad stuff that happens. You know?
No, I get that. And I do think when I watch you acting, it's genuine. It's like when you watch you acting in the program, I believe in you in that part. And I think that
thank you.
There's so many people that you watch and you go, I don't believe them in that part. And it puts you off programs. Like there's a lot of stuff I turn off after the first or second. Yeah. You'll see it recently, Pierce Brosnan getting a lot of shit about his accent. And people are like, I've stopped watching it. Do you know? And then
I haven't seen that. That's Mudblood, isn't it?
Mudblood, yeah.
Do you know the only thing I would say about how I would weigh in on that is that he's a character who's from Kerry, but who's living in London for 50 years, isn't he?
So he would have a bit of a bullshit accent.
Have a mix.
So if he has a mixed accent...
And that's the way he's looking at it.
And sometimes people just look at, in terms of accents as well, the binary aspect of it. It's just that, and he has to do a Kerry accent that sounds like he's from the Kerry Mountains. But the fella's been living in England for 50 years. So
it's not as broad, yeah.
So, and Pierce Brosnan lived in England growing up, so... That's probably more accurate to what his accent should be like. But because he's not doing a pure Kerry man, you know what I mean? It's so. Yeah. So that's what I'd say about that. I never watched Mobland yet, though. Is it good?
I turned it off just mainly because I was sort of
Pierce Brosnan's accent.
No, that was highlighted by people. That wasn't. I thought Tom Hardy was fucking great in it, and I loved his character in it. But some of the other ones that was in it, and it wasn't Pierce Brosnan, by the way. It wasn't him that put me off it. It was some of the other ones in it, and I was just like, oh, we're fucking going down. I just like I would like people to fucking make new stuff. Yeah. Like a lot of stuff's regurgitated and it's fucking. Do you know? Like once I watch Love Hate, I don't watch a series if it's on every week. I wait until it's done and then
I'm the exact same.
I have to watch it all because I can't wait.
Totally, it's the best way to do it. I can't wait either. I can't wait another week. Just watch it all. People are telling me this show. What season is it in? Season 2. When it's finished, like you let me know. I'll watch it. Yeah.
I watch it, binge watch it, like, and I fucking love Love Hate. Like I fucking loved it. Out of all the things, like there's been so many. Like Kin was alright, but it was always trying to be Love Hate. It's one of them ones. It's like, oh, we need to try and get this, but there's talk of it coming back.
There is talk of it coming back. Yeah. You know, man, again, trauma and all this, great things are born out of a trauma or an experience. And actually, Love Hate was for the rider. Stuart Carlin is a good friend of mine, and we're riding at the moment for something. And his mother was a nurse, right? God rest her soul. Passed away a few years ago. And she was a nurse in Blanchardstown Hospital and had a lot of gangsters coming in and out. And she was a very religious woman and very kind of loving and caring woman. And she would care for these gangsters coming in, you know. And it was one particular incident where she cared for this fella and he got shot, I think it was. And that's what the in was for Stuart as a writer, you know, thinking about that and love, hate, and these sort of characters that are maybe seen as black and white in the media, but there's a complexity actually in real life. And that'd be very true to life for a lot of the kind of characters I would have met in that world. Again, on the Sunday world, people are calling them psychotic or whatever, but or serial killers or whatever, or, you know, so not the serial killer ones, but some of them are actually dead sound. You know, that's the irony of it. You know,
everybody has their own complex lives, and that goes back to the individualism thing as well. Nobody is black and white.
Yeah,
everybody has so much going on that you could never even imagine. Everybody walking down the street.
Yeah, and we all have the propensity to be evil and do evil as well. I mean, you have to understand that. It's like the psychological theory of the shadow and not integrating your shadow. And I think you can look at that from the psychological perspective of Jung and say that. But you can also look at it from a religious or theological perspective and say it's the demons or whatever way you want to look at it. But whenever you repress something that you don't acknowledge, you can come out and manifest in bad behaviours. And you know, we see it happening in every country, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting you say about because obviously you've had to look into the scandal, the sex abuse scandal of the church and stuff. And it's interesting you say about being a spiritual man and like, you know, to like become more in touch with that side of you, like even after doing all of that, because that's something we would talk about as actually one of the reasons why religion has become less part of the life and why we've become a bit disillusioned with it.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting. And so where does that fit in your godliness or how you see things?
Well, what I'd say to people who've went away from God because of the actions of the Roman Catholic Church is this. I totally understand because I'd done the same, right? I made a film about it, so I'm a good person to speak about it. I made a film about the scandal and more specifically about the intergenerational trauma that our generations are going through because of that. So I've been on a journey back to the church, and I would have always considered myself some form of Catholic more culturally in the past. And I've had multiple family members that have went through that system and were abused. So with all that together and the journey that I've been on, I've come to the conclusion that, first of all, the church is an institution. The church is not God, right? Now, the church that is left behind by Jesus was the Catholic Church. And that has that succession and that tradition going back 2,000 years. But the closer you get to God, the more you get attacked by evil. And evil is a true thing. All we got to do is look at the 20th century and 100 million people that died because of one tyranny or another, and all by atheistic leaders, by the way, who had no belief in God, including Hitler, who pretended to be Christian. But if you look at Mao and if you look at Stalin and you look at all those and Pol Pot and all those, they were all atheists, right? So how I look at the church now is that the church is a place I go to worship. I believe in the Holy Sacraments. Jesus teaches about them and the importance of receiving them. And I believe that the church was attacked and, like all institutions, was corrupted and can be corrupted and always should. So that's why I'll always stand over the film I made, The Black Wealth, because that put a critical eye on the church. And I think that's what we should always do. Whenever something gets too powerful, we should worry about it. And an entity, an institution. You know, the Irish priests in particular started to think that they were princes.
Yeah.
They were not princes. They were servants. And they were meant to be holier than us because they chose that life. However, what you're seeing now actually is the contrary. The new generation of priests grew up with the stigma of the paedophile priest, right? And they've went completely away from that prince mentality and are total servants and humble. Like, if you want to know, you want to go to any Catholic church, no matter where it is in Ireland, north, south, east or west, on a Sunday, they're going to be talking about Gaza and children starving in Gaza in every single sermon. They're going to dedicate it to every mass I go to. That's what they talk about. They talk about Gaza. They talk about Yemen. They talk about all the things that are happening in the world that's wrong, all the injustices, and that's actually the power of the church and the power of the new generation of the priests. And more people are coming back to the church. And we shouldn't allow these evil, demonic people that did those crimes to take us away from actually what God's church is, and it's love, and it's justice, and it's great healing. And what I'd say finally on that, because I have a lot of people actually ask me questions about religion online because I'm talking more about it. And a lot of people for many years have asked me about mental health. And because again, I talked about that. My father passed away by suicide. I come from a community that has the highest suicide rate in the world per capita, and I've overcome mental health problems. But people ask me about what's your sort of plan around it all. And what I'd say is, if you are suffering with your mental health, I'd ask you, first of all, what's your relationship with God? Do you have a relationship with God, with a higher being, something that's greater than yourself? Because if you don't, you think that you're God, whether you know it consciously or not. It's the ego drama you're in, not the theodrama, as Bishop Barron would say, right? You're writing, directing, producing and starring in your show, right? And when you become God, then the only way is to hell. And again, the 20th century is a way of looking at that. And you look at Stalin, you look at Mao, and you look at all those figures who became God. So if you do not submit to something greater than yourself, and everybody who's in addiction knows this as well, and whatever, you're going to go into a dark place. So I'd say, what's your relationship with God? Start praying daily. Give thanks for all, because no matter what, no matter how bad shit is going on in your life, you can make a list of stuff you're thankful for. Thank God for my family. Thank God for my friends. Thank God for all my loved ones. Thank God for my health, my relative health, even if I'm not fully healthy. Thank God I'm not drinking today. Thank God for I have a roof over my head. Thank God I've heating, you know?
Yeah.
And go, I surrender this day to God. This is your day to God. You guide me and I will follow you. If you do that, you go to Mass a few times. In 1 week, you're going to be radically different. From Monday to Monday, try that for a week. You're going to be completely different. And what happens from prayer and actually building an active relationship with God, because we often wonder what happened when I asked God for this or that and the other. Well, did you build a relationship with God? You get great clarity when you build a relationship with God. But you got to understand that it's a two-way street. You know, if you have a friendship, for instance, right, or you have a girlfriend, right, but you don't put effort into your girlfriend or your wife, you don't put effort into her. You don't build a relationship. You don't ask her questions. You don't ask her how was her health. If you don't do anything, have them deep conversations, or you're just texting an odd time and whatever, and whenever it suits you, you go to your girlfriend. Well, do you expect her to be fully loyal to you, to fully listen to you? I mean, that's a person that'd be getting taken advantage of, in my opinion. Now, if you believe in God like I do, you have to believe that God is greater than all, and God goes before everything. Everything, even your own family. That's very hard for us to take because we love our family so much. But God created us all. And if that's what you believe, that's what you have to believe, right? If you believe in that idea of God. So, if that's the case, where's your personal relationship? Why are you not checking in with God every day? Why are you not thanking God? Why are you not giving thanks, showing gratitude, and praying to God and giving glory to God? And if you do that, then you have that relationship. You have the clarity in mind through prayer and through receiving the Holy Sacraments. And through that, your life genuinely improves. Now, whether this is a placebo or not, I know in my heart and soul it's not. And I'd just like to say, to go really crazy about this, like really crazy, one of the things that brought me back to the church is going to be something that you won't believe, but I have all the proof of it. So I did a show called Sleeping with the Entity, where myself and Tiernan Williams, my business partner and best friend in this world, got 6 celebrity duos and put them in 6 haunted houses all across Ireland, right? Tiernan was a staunch atheist, academic, integrative psychotherapist and a cognitive scientist. He thought all this stuff was bullshit. I was a believer, I would say, a gentle believer. Didn't expect what was about to happen, by the way. Every single place we went that was haunted, and we judged it with all this scientific equipment that we bought over in England. Tiernan vetted because he's a scientist. And we had voices coming through the voice box. We had thermal energy getting picked up. We had all these sort of patterns that come up as stick men or stick women. We'd voices in Wicklow jail coming out. We'd a person or an entity trying to imitate my dead father in the Hellfire Club, where all that horrific stuff happened in the past, right? Stuff happened in this that if you're not a believer in any way, you're going to be completely shocked with. I actually put out a challenge to all journalists to have a look at the footage that we had and to dissect it in any way they want, the raw footage, without anything happening to it. You can have it. You go over and tell me if it's fake. No journalist took me up on that answer, up on that question. And that was a big part of bringing me back to God when I witnessed that. And Tiernan, who was a staunch atheist, academic, integrated psychotherapist, cognitive scientist, is now a Christian and has a crucifix around his neck. So again, that was when I actually saw and experienced the supernatural, then I was like, what the? It was one day I turned around to Tiernan while we were in the edit and I went, Tiernan, the fuck, man? Like, what do you think about this Bible stuff? And he said, it has to be true. Because of all the biblical references that was coming out constantly from these voices and through all this signals and electromagnetic stuff that I don't understand because I'm a fucking traveller, a fucking actor. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's been many plot points along the journey for me back to God, including actual supernatural experiences with learning from life, with needing healing, with needing God, and exploring theology in general, because I explored more than the Catholic Church. I explored Protestantism and the different denominations and born-agains, because you've seen a lot of that. And then it all led me back to the Catholic Church, which is the church that Jesus essentially founded, you know?
It's mad. It's one of them things, like, genuinely, I wanted to be a priest when I was younger. You wouldn't have remembered any of that because you weren't born. No. But like, I was really religious as a kid and went, like, chapel 3-4 times a week, fucking done everything. And then something happened to me that made me come away from God. And then I was working with a guy who's really religious. This guy was, like, really religious, really Catholic. And he was the first one that wasn't trying to force it upon me. And he says, you'll come back in your own time.
And that's the best way, because you can't force it on people. Actually, the best way is to lead by example, and I've sort of done that in the last good while by going back to God. I've lost a lot of weight, I've disciplined myself, I got a lot of work, but my mental health has improved massively, and my brothers especially have noticed it, because we've all went through the grief and trauma together, and my mother and all that, and it's helped a number of people around me now go back to God by not being preachy, but when I'm asked, I always answer, because as a part of your role as a believer is to actually evangelize, because when you understand and feel the love of God, you do want other people to feel that. So whenever they ask, I'll oblige, because you might be a door opening for them to love and acceptance and healing, you know, and to let everything go, because we live in a world that is so anxiety ridden, you know, constant dopamine hits and doom scrolling and drinking and taking drugs and whatever. And actually the antidote to that is peace, and how you get peace for me has been through God, you know. So it is a beautiful thing. And actually people focus a lot of the time too much on the negative side, or what is deemed as the negative side, or how they perceive the stuff about sin and shame and guilt and whatever. What you'll actually find is a lot of the stuff, like if you look at the sins, for instance, pride, right? One of the first deadly sin is the number one thing that has sabotaged my life over and over again. All the stupid stuff I said, did, got in trouble with, or physically got in trouble in the past, or bled into, or was led into, was all pride. And that was a biblical teaching, what pride did to me, you know. These rules aren't meant to restrict you. Actually, these rules are meant to set you free, you know. Gluttony, another thing, gluttony made me balloon up to 23 stone. Give me severe complex sleep apnea, GERD, high blood pressure, loads of stuff. And the combination of all that, almost life-threatening for me, you know. When I started practicing the opposite, the virtue of temperance, then my body healed and I feel way better. So look at the actual biological, real-life consequences to the sins, the deadly sins, and what the counter does.
Yeah.
You actually bring the health. So these are teachings that are meant to actually serve you while you're on this earth, because a lot of people think it's just about getting into heaven. No, actually, living your life accordingly to these teachings makes your life better while you're here, you know, and makes you realize you're not the center of the universe, you know, and no one is. And don't ever believe anybody who pretends to be.
No. And I think you're right. That is that God thing. Like, you see the likes of Trump, and he firmly believes, like, just the other day, him wanting that parade for his birthday, and you see all these things.
I haven't watched politics in many months, so I don't even know about this. I did see some of what's going on in Iran and Israel, though. Yeah. I switched off all those algorithms because they're so negative. And I realised I can't actually do anything about it. But I mean, if you look at the American president in general, right? To be American president, you're selected by a very few. You're not selected by the public in general. And that's whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. Actually, the worst of them all was Obama. He killed more than any of them. He was the drone king who broke records for killing innocent brown Muslim people in the third world. So Democrat, Republican, all I care about is who kills less people in the Middle East, because that's their favourite place to go and kill people, or anywhere in the world. The more peace, the better. That's all I care about from an American president perspective of an Irishman, me, is their foreign policy. Whoever's the most peaceful. And I think every one of them are tyrannical. I wouldn't vote for any of them. I wouldn't see any American president that I would vote for, you know.
And I think it's just because, like, we were talking about faith and stuff like that. And I think it's insane that the Middle East is always the epicenter of, like, where they want to control. And that is where Jesus was crucified.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
But that's there since the beginning of all this. Like, religious strife has been happening, and you know, between Christians, Muslims, and Jews in that part of the world, because people really believe to an extreme in that part of the world.
Yeah.
Like, and that's great. But like, for instance, there are people now who are being slaughtered in Nigeria, Christians. No one's talking about them. They're being slaughtered by Islamic extremists. In the Congo, the same. In Syria, the same. Other kinds of Muslims too. Alawite Muslims are being slaughtered as well in Syria. You remember your man Assad? He was an Alawite Muslim. But these people are actually deciding to die and be martyrs rather than reject Jesus like the Christians. Mm-hmm. That'll tell you how strong the faith is, that they're willing to, someone is standing over them with a sword or a gun saying, reject Jesus now or die. And they're all saying, I'll die. I'd rather die. Like, look at that sense of belief. And it's just it saddens me so much, although there's a special place in heaven for martyrs. It saddens me so much because then you look in Ireland, and I totally get it, the disenfranchised youth especially, and you see empty churches, right? And yet church attendance is through the roof among Christians in Nigeria, even though they're getting slaughtered by Islamist extremists, yeah? And there's extremists in every religion, as we know.
Yeah.
Wherever you go to 2 months of extreme. But isn't it a shame where you see these people actually worshipping God through the fullness of their heart and risking their life to even go to church? And then you come here and you just see loads of empty churches. It's terrible, you know.
Yeah,
but totally and utterly understandable, you know. But I think there is a new generation and a resurgence, you know. So please God, people will come back to the faith.
Yeah. Well, I'm at the stage now of my faith where there's something there, and I fucking don't know what it is, but I definitely look up to it, and I be very grateful, and I talk to whatever it is every morning. When I get up,
there you go.
I get up, open my eyes,
that's
and I'm
the
like,
start of it all, brother.
You know what
just
I mean?
Being open to that and being open to that frequency. That's the beginning of it all. You know?
So never know where I'll take you to. But John, it's been absolutely amazing to have you on. I think it'll blow a lot of people's minds because it's been a brilliant podcast. I mean, if you don't take out of this podcast something, we've hit on a lot of things, but I just want to say to you, genuinely as an actor, and I don't mean this just because you're here, fucking 100%, like, as an Irish actor, you're fucking up there, and I just love watching your stuff, and just keep doing what you're doing. And if anybody has a chance, like, to be offered that chance to go and do something with John, go and fucking do it if you want to do it, and speak to him. The man's full of knowledge, he's here, he's giving it out, so go and do it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And look, thank the three of you for all being so open. It's great when you walk in the room full of open people.
Yeah.
You know, because you end up actually having a good conversation. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
It was a great one and fucking took so much from it. And I need to clear something up with you too.
Yeah.
There was a couple of years ago you were doing a fight on the bill for Steve Timothy was doing one down in Galway.
Oh, yeah.
And
I fought your man, what's his name? MCDONNELL.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not the fight that John wants. And I put up and says, why don't you fight me?
Oh, yeah,
And then everybody, and you came back and were like, do you want your go?
Yeah.
And I have never had reaction like it. I had Tommy McCarthy. I had every boxer. I had Eamon
Tommy's
McGill.
my old mate.
Yeah.
And Tyrone McKenna and all the lads up there, they were all my
Eamon
generation.
McGill,
We
the
all boxed
boxing
together.
referee. And every one of them was like, what are you doing? And I went, I'm under no illusion. I used to go and watch John boxing. Here's me. I'm only trying to wind the whole thing up. And they're like, what are you doing? You're going to
That's
get
what a
fucked.
comedian does, like.
But it was genuinely just one of them. I've never seen as many people worried for me in my life. They're like,
You never fucking know. I've two bad shoulders, Paddy. I think you could take me, to be honest.
I don't think so. But it was one of them also. Brother, it wasn't anything at all. It was fucking genuinely a bit of crack. But thank you for coming on.
We're going to have a fight now in the car park. They're going to show fair play.
I've just got to the tail end of it. You're like, do you know I was talking about pride there? Come on. But no.
The old negative stereotype is going to come out through me now outside.
100%. And listen, see, speaking on acting, like you're saying, getting taped and stuff like that, I went through like 3 or 4 years of the BBC, and I would constantly ring me up and go, here, Paddy, we have a project here, and I used to go, which scumbag do you want me to play?
That's scumbag number 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And
it was
that's
like,
classism.
yeah. It's just like, but it actually went past that where there was parts which were me because I started getting a name for myself.
Oh, yeah.
So people were writing and going, this is Paddy McDonnell. And every time I went for the part as Paddy McDonnell, I didn't get it.
No.
Have you ever went for a part as John Connors and didn't get it?
No. I've gotten it every time.
You know, it's like,
I'm sorry.
how bad is
Can't
it
agree
that
with
you
you.
can't get the part that you're... So I don't know if it was me overacting me, but the best one...
You're probably better at playing something completely different.
I think so.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That's the comedian in you, you know?
I think so. But it was funny because one of the actors then contacted me and he was like, hello, Paddy, I've been cast as this character and it's you, and I was wondering if I could spend the day with you.
But also, Paddy, I'd say you're great at improv, though. You know, improvising and making it up as well, you know? Like,
Yeah.
A lot of this the strength of comedians, I find, as well, are great improvers, you know? And which should be embraced more in Irish film because that's the way it should be. Improvisation is the way in film, you know?
Yeah,
Anyway, go on,
just
you were
to do
saying.
it. But it was really like, I was like, I can't believe I didn't get the part for myself. And then the actor wanting to fucking come and spend the day with me because he got the part that I didn't
Oh, that's horrendous.
get. You know?
Did you do it?
No, fuck. I told him,
Legend.
I told him to fuck off.
Oh, 100%. No, I'm not. You're not living vicariously through me and, taking me.
And I was like, you know why I went for the part? And he says, the director says that at the time he didn't know it was you. And I was like, well, he didn't come back and go, here, sorry about that. Let's get you in.
Well, that's the worst thing. That's the worst thing. They very rarely come back and tell you didn't get it. So you're waiting. You're hanging on forever. Like,
Yeah.
I'm still waiting 10 years for a part to audition for 10 years.
Yeah.
No.
And where do you see yourself in the next couple of years?
Oh, where do I see myself? Like professionally as an actor, just continuing. Like I have a good bit of stuff actually coming out of the Jim Sheridan and David Merriman film recreation, which will be in the cinemas in September, I believe, and it's like the most controversial film I've ever done because it's about the murder of Sophie Descon de Plantier, the French woman who died 29 years ago
In Cork?
Cork, yeah. So it's about that, and more or less the kind of lead actor, male actor anyway.
How much of the actual story is in the movie?
Oh yeah, the story is so. What? Just to let you know what it is, it's basically about the jury that decided not to extradite Ian Bailey to France, in 2021 during COVID, and no one knows what happened in that room. So it's a fictionalized version of what happened in that room. So what happened really among all of us as actors is that we all brought a lot of our own self and our own characters to it.
Right.
Our versions of ourselves. That's what Jim and David wanted it to make it real. So it's as much about internal and unconscious bias and our own baggage and trauma as it is about the case, which makes it very interesting. As I said, we got rave reviews by all the American reviewers last week, all week long. So I'm delighted personally for Jim, and I'm delighted personally for David, because directors put in more time than the actors. You know, they live with the films for years.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you don't get a hit as a director, it's fucking way tougher. Like as an actor, whatever, someone doesn't give you a good review, I get past that. You know, as a director, it's much harder to take.
Because you believe in the project.
You believe in it, it's like a child to you, you know what I mean? And it's your baby, you know?
It is. No, I get that. I mean, the one thing for me, the night that I went to open my play, I was just like, what are you doing? You know, a sold out room, and I went, you sold this out, you're a fake. You sold this out because they know that you're a good comedian, but this isn't comedy, this is a fucking play. And you've never done this before. And then you have that whole it's just like it came, the whole floods came to me the first night, and then I done it the first night, and I was like, fuck you worried about.
But also you had all that stage experience already.
Yeah.
That's what all that matters in theatre.
Yeah.
Is stage experience.
It was just
I went to see Glengarry Glen Ross on Broadway stage the other day, and the absolute highlight of it was Bill Burr. For me, Bill Burr killed it among all. Like, there was Kieran Culkin there who just won the Oscar. There was your man at Better Call Saul, Bob Odenkirk, and other great actors. But Bill Burr stole the show. Like, I mean, he was fucking electric from the start.
But I think it's because we have timing, we know timing.
Totally, timing all day long, and that comfortability, just being comfortable on the most pressure-ridden thing that you can do, which is being on stage, that space. Like Bill Burr, how many times has Bill Burr been on stage in 35 years of comedies?
Yeah.
Thousands
and you're on your own
times.
sort of thing. Yeah.
And he absolutely came out and steamrolled that show. Like, to the point where everything else dipped when he wasn't on stage because he was so good.
Yeah.
You know?
You felt the presence.
Oh, it was incredible, like, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, glad to see it. John, thank you very much.
Thanks, brother.
It's going to go down as a historic podcast.
People love this one.
Is this going to be like top notch? Really brilliant. And I wish you all well, bro.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you very much.
When you go.